So, hi everyone. Welcome back to Fugitive Chefs podcast. If you're new here, I'm Furkan, an R&D chef and a gastronomic consultant based in San Sebastian in Spain, and I work at the Basque Culinary Center at the moment. Usually, this podcast is about conversations with chefs and food professionals who have stepped outside the traditional restaurant system to kind of forge their own path of what else could somebody do as a chef but not working in restaurants. So today is a little different actually. If you see, I don't have any headphones on. There's no interviews on this episode. It is actually my birthday. It is October the 7th when this episode will come out. And I thought, what about instead of interviewing someone else, I could kind of turn the mic to myself and share my own story. So think of this as an episode of an origin story, the story of how did I become a fugitive chef in the first place, right? So I grew up in India. My name is not really an obvious giveaway, but I was born in India, in Bombay specifically. And food over there for me growing up was always at the center of everything, of festivals. I mean, India happens to have a lot of festivals, and I grew up in an Iranian Muslim family. But of course, my building, we were the only Muslims. So my most festivities were, of course, our Eid and other festivals within the Muslim community, but also a lot of festivals the Hindus have, and all of them associated with food. So growing up, especially in Bombay, I think Bombay is such a unique city because a lot of people from India across different regions of it, of how big it is, end up in Bombay to kind of make it in their career or study or with aspirations to make something bigger. And that also attracts a lot of different sort of people with different eating habits, different spice levels, different affinity of things. And the food culture is very, very interesting. So I grew up over there, and I basically was in a family where men also cooked, which is I would say at that point was not very common, because most conversations with friends from school or who made your tiffin this afternoon, or seeing my neighbors, mostly women cooking, and seeing my father used to cook pretty often, my uncle cooked very often as well. Who we grew up very close to. And also, I didn't really grow up with my grandparents. So I don't really have this my grandmother taught me to cook, that sort of story. But I mean, my grandparents passed away on my father's side pretty young, when he was very young. But he was adopted by his aunt, and she spoke a lot about cooking. So I did eat some of her food, but didn't literally learn with her to cook. But I heard from her a lot of stories of back when my grandparents were around. India was still a colony, and they were part of this Nawabs, which is possibly literally translated to princely states. So India was never one country; it was many princely states governing their own sort of governance. All outsiders, as I said, my Iranian family coming from there, and the British government kind of bought these princely states together on doing services for them. But without diving too much into that, the reason I share this is because, of course, they had a lot of privilege and access to hunting or cooks from all over the region to come cook for them, and throwing big feasts for British politicians who were visiting at that point. So I used to hear a lot of stories from her, and she was herself a very unique person, because she came from Kalimpong, which is northeast of India, very close to Darjeeling. Maybe you know it because maybe you have had recently a Darjeeling black tea. She came from that region. She was a Protestant Christian herself, so also an interreligious marriage back in the day, pretty rare. So from her was a lot of cultural stories and how food culture exists in her part of India, where they speak Nepalese and very influenced by the Chinese cuisine or the Nepalese Tibetan cuisine. And then her coming to Bombay and seeing this different cuisine, So cut short from there, that's where I would say the first interest for cooking came in. A lot of careers came in the way. I was considering engineering, like every Indian, I have to say. I was considering politics. I briefly worked in a political party, campaigning for them. I was volunteering a lot with activism, and also seriously considering Navy, military, army, one of these defense sort of jobs for a different reason, which I don't think is the idea of the podcast. But somehow I ended up doing hospitality management. So when you think of being a chef, and that came from during school vacations and things like that, watching Kitchen Confidential a lot from Anthony Bourdain. Reading Kitchen Confidential a lot, and watching No Reservations. So both from Anthony Bourdain. Kitchen Confidential on one side being his version of what he saw kitchen life as, which I never really got to see, of that amount of violence or that amount of drug abuse or that amount of I don't know, if you know the kitchen, if you're a chef listening, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, it was pretty interesting to see that side of his kitchen career. Was very interesting, I think, to read about for many chefs like me, medium raw, or even Kitchen Confidential. And the No Reservations were very, very interesting as a chef traveling all over the world, and that was also pretty cool to see how different cultures cook. That was some of my interests. And I thought, okay, you know what? This could be a great career to be a chef. And the only path at the point I had was to go study hospitality management, because hotel management or hospitality management is the career people do if you want to become a chef in India, which is kind of rare, but very, very big back in India. So most good restaurants at that point existed in hotels, which is changing now. And at that point, I studied at that school called the IHM Mumbai, or Dada Catering College, one of the first hospitality institutes in all of Southeast Asia. Started back, I think, 80 years ago, when India was just a very young country. And learned a lot of there. Learned, I would say, not a lot of cooking, but a lot of management skills, a lot of people skills. Also learned a lot from my peers who were very passionate people. Learned how hotels work, and I think it got me to meet good chefs, good people with great basics, right, and also gave me access to kind of right to restaurants. And that's where I first started working at restaurants. I briefly worked at this place called The Table, by then run by Chef Alex Sanchez from Bombay, who had just come back from Per Se, French Laundry, and places like that. And so I used to spend some time there during vacations, sometimes during evenings after school. Also briefly spent some time at Bombay Canteen, at another place in a very classical Indian restaurant as well. And I'll just run fast through this, but that was kind of my college life. And the reason I left India immediately after college, so 2017, I graduated from IHM Mumbai, from that college I spoke about. And I don't stay in India because all the prospective careers I had. So I was not a very bad student. I was a pretty good student, I think. And I got a lot of these interviews, which you have these career placements to the campus. And most of them were management trainee programs. So for those who don't know, management trainee program is basically you will be working for a hotel for a 2 years closed contract, where they will basically teach you, if you're in a kitchen management training program, they will basically teach you everything about their ethos, their vision, the mission of the company, what principles, say, a core group, or Marriott's or Hyatt's, they work, how their company culture is, what kind of menus they have, what kind of outlets they have. Because most of these hotels have, say, an X outlet which exists in 10 restaurants, and they're kind of trying to maintain that standard. So they teach you all those skills. They teach you a lot of team management skills. And at the end of this 2 year period, you become a sous chef or a junior sous chef, possibly. And in a few years, you'll be a head chef. To me, that at that point, for a loss of words, I found that very stupid, because how could I, as a 20-year-old, go through a 2 year management trainee program made by that hotel, where they kind of groom you to be that position? But still, I found that a little messy, because I had done some internships at hotels, at Grand Hyatt in Mumbai, for example, and I had seen how these people who are management trainees are treated by the real staff who's been there for years and learning how to cook, or they are pretty established cooks, and then they just have somebody who's come out of culinary school kind of being their boss, but actually only making duty rosters, making staff schedules, making uniform orders for them, or so possibly maybe doing some menu development and things like that, but I didn't really find that interesting. And going back a little, during my college time, I had written a very interesting letter to Chef Paco Morales in southern Spain, in Córdoba. And my letter to him was a little about how was he. I was very interested, as I said, in my family's history. I was very interested into cuisines or restaurants which explore history as a cuisine. And he was doing a restaurant, it still is today, a 3 Michelin star restaurant in Córdoba called Noor. And he was creating this project where you basically eat 10th century Spain at that point. Today, I think he advances every year a little bit on how Spain has evolved. And at that point, Córdoba or Andalus was the capital of the Islamic world. So the Arab world, its capital was Córdoba at one point in its golden period. The Arabs brought to Spain paper, writing, a lot of novelty in terms of education. There's some great architecture as well. I mean, south of Spain has a lot of architecture today. Today they are converted into cathedrals, but these were like mezquitas or libraries, universities built by the Arabs. And he was doing cooking from back then. So for you to get perspective what Noor is, imagine a Spain which doesn't have tomato, doesn't have chocolate, doesn't have corn, doesn't have chilies, doesn't have a lot of ingredients which today make pork. I mean, you can't think about it in the Arab world. So all these ingredients which today make Spain are very new if you look at world history. And he was doing that cuisine. So I was super interested in his project. I saw he has done a seminar in the UK. So I'd see that on YouTube. And I said, you know what, I want to write to this guy just to ask how does he do it, and would be something interesting for me. He interpreted that, because it was in lecture in English, Spain doesn't happen to have a lot of people who speak English. And he interpreted that as an application for an internship. And he said, oh, great to hear from you, Furkan. Nice to know you want to apply for a stage. I didn't even know at that point what a stage is. I was like, stage? How do you, I mean, didn't even, I read it as stage. That's how it's in English. And I didn't get what that meant. And I Googled and found out what a stage is. But I was like, oh, this is not what I wanted. Let me just ignore it. So this was second year of college. And then when I finished college in the third year and was out of options to work in India, I said yes to this internship, ended up in Spain. So I spent a few months there. I spent like half a year in Córdoba. Then I later moved on to restaurants in Paris because there was one restaurant by Chef Pascal Barbo, which I wanted to always work at. I did a stage over there as well. Came back to India, figured out that India is not going to be somewhere I'm going to make a career because it still felt that I'll be struggling a lot to express what I want, or kind of I had seen how great things can be, and it felt like a bargain to be in India, or it felt like going a notch below. So I struggled a year in India collecting money and came back to Spain. So I came back for another very short stage in Mugaritz. Very subsequently to that, I got hired at Mugaritz. I was there in 2019 internship, and then 2021 I was working for them. And in this period of 2019 to 2021, I learned a great deal about, I wouldn't say food, because if you know Mugaritz a little, Mugaritz isn't the place you go just to eat. Of course, you can have a great meal over there. Depends which season, which year it is. There are some great plates from there. But it's mostly a very provocative, psychological, philosophical experience. It's a restaurant which works on oxymorons. So they explore things like ugly, beautiful, or extremely crazy, but extremely delicious at the same time. And I think the best way to explain you Mugaritz is possibly explaining one of the dishes that I did over there, right? So there was this dish which had like a lamb, a small steak of lamb, pretty small, I think a one biter. And it was served with a saffron sauce. And next to the plate, you had like two bowls of saffron. One of them was actually saffron. The other one was Basque chili, which was dried and chopped, julienne, to a way that it exactly looked like saffron, and there was equal volume of saffron for 1 gram of saffron. So that means it was a lot of precision cutting over there. And the waiter came to you, served you lamb, and said, this is not the best lamb you'll have, because there are great people who do great lamb dishes, but this is more about the humble sauce that you see and the saffron on the side, because you have two bowls of saffron. One of them is actually saffron. One of them is a chili, which has been cut by 30 interns who come from all over the world. And every day we do 30 minutes of this in the morning together as a team to produce enough saffron, enough of this fake saffron. So today, where do you put your value? Into 1 gram of the most expensive spice, or 1 gram of 30 people's work who have come all the way to do this? So with a restaurant like this, which challenges a lot of stereotypes, it's very provocative, as I said. And I think the most creative restaurant I have worked at personally, because it goes beyond techniques, it goes beyond machines, it goes beyond molecular gastronomy and principles like that. It goes deeper into philosophy and exchanging ideas of human, the human brain, breaking down into smaller principles which can be then applied to dishes. So super cool restaurant. I worked there over 3 years and had a really good time. Of course, with its own tough moments. I mean, it's not easy. I was the first Indian to be hired in that restaurant. Immigration, of course, does come in the way when at least you're hired. Like being an intern, I think, is a little more easier. A lot of Indians have been interns at restaurants like these, but getting hired there and having your paperwork done, it was quite a challenge. But it was a great experience. During my time at Mugaritz, I also attended Mad Academy, which is this academy started by René Redzepi and Magnus Nilsson from Fabriken. And they basically have these crash courses for business. Business and leadership is the first one, and the second one is called environment and sustainability. I was in the environment and sustainability cohort, and I was chosen as one of the few people to receive like a 6,000 euro scholarship to attend Mad Academy in Copenhagen, through which I met people who were like climate scientists, people who were first generation farmers, people who do zero waste cooking. For example, Douglas Markmaster from Silo was one of my lecturers, and learned a great deal about how Denmark and how the food system in Denmark works in a sustainable way. That was a very interesting phase of my career, I feel. And just after that, I came back to Mugaritz, tried applying a few things. Didn't really work great with the team. I feel the restaurant itself has done so many things for so long that it makes big changes. And that was, I think, my first wake up call to sort of want to transition from Mugaritz. Being in Copenhagen was a great exposure. I felt like in Mugaritz, I was at a point where I was super comfortable. I felt I was doing great in my career, and I felt like I would like to be a little more challenged. I felt like the conversations I had in Copenhagen for the 1 week I was there were very challenging. Some of them were terms I had never heard, and I was like, I would love to be in that sort of an environment where I feel like I have a conversation, I have to go home, write down things or make notes or Google what that was. So I was kind of attracted to that in a way, that energy of Copenhagen. And Mugaritz is also a funny restaurant because it shuts for 6 months and works for 6 months. So 6 months they shut, two of them literally shut, and four of them doing R&D events and a mix of things. And one of the seasons I was like, I want to do something else during winter. And I actually drove to Copenhagen, and I was going to end up at Alchemist originally because I knew some people back there, and I said, I would love to get some exposure into Alchemist and also see firsthand how these restaurants work. Noma, of course, we all know about it as some people in the industry. And I thought that would not be possible. I thought it was not even approachable because I feel so many people apply to Noma. And for me, just last moment, just showing up over there wouldn't cut the budget. They have a budget in terms of time and attention they can give people. Alchemist basically had given me an appointment to show up on 21st of December, if I'm not wrong. And then they had a case of COVID. COVID was still a thing back then in 2021. They said, you know what, just come after Christmas because we don't want to get new people into the controlled atmosphere we have to not risk another shutting down or canceling diners. And I said, okay, that's cool. That's fine. And I wrote to Noma to connect with somebody in Noma who could guide me. I can do a 1 month internship. That's all I can afford. But I would also like to see if I could be hired in the team. And so I had gone into the conversation of internship, telling them that I would love to have like a test at the end of the month to see if I could be hired. It was just actually myself checking the market, checking if I cut out for a restaurant like that, So, they were very kind enough to accept me. In the first week or second week of January, I started in Noma. Had a great time over there. Opened my eyes to, the world is so different. I feel in Mugaritz and Noma because Mugaritz ran with 4-5 of us at that point in 2021 as hired employees in the service kitchen, 3 or 4 of them in R&D, and 30 interns. So the proportion was 1:10 or like 1:8 for hired chef to intern. Whereas in Noma, they had like 22 chefs in the service kitchen. They had 6 of them in the R&D. They had a fermentation lab. They had like people hired and doing the job. And then they also had interns, of course. Today, Noma does pay interns. Back then, it was not paid. They had accommodation, which they paid for and stuff, but not my thing to get into. But it was a great exposure. I feel Noma, even as an intern, the first week was super interesting. I say first week because, second week of Noma, a lot of people fall sick of COVID again. The COVID ended up being my guardian angel of sorts because I didn't fall sick. I got COVID later being in Noma hired. But the second week itself, I was in the section 4. They call it at that point. Noma just works named like they're called section 1 to 1, 2, 3, 4. There's no real, I would say, it's not divided like first course, second course, and things like that. So my section had 3 people and me, like 3 hired staff and me as the intern. In the first week we had some trial runs. The new menu was starting for Ocean Season 2022. And the second week, suddenly, there is just one person from the hired employees. So 3 of them, 2 of them got COVID. And the second day of week 2, there was nobody. It was me alone in the section, the intern, who had somehow managed to learn all the recipes and had to give the service together with 3 chefs from the R&D department, who of course knew the menu because they built it. And that gave me like a very good exposure into people who've been years in Noma, working for them, traveling with them, doing projects for them, doing events for them, and working closely with all of them, like people like Thomas Friebel, with Nate, with so many cool people. Merrick from Noma was super interesting, and I feel like they put in a good word for me. And at the end of week 2, Kenneth, the head chef at that point, who's today heading fermentation, he called me to his office and said, you know what? We do not need to wait 2 more weeks. We'll actually like to offer you the contract of being a chef at Noma. And I didn't have to give much thought because, of course, I had a signed contract to go back to in Mugaritz in 2022 around April. But I was like, this is once in a lifetime. I mean, so many people walk from the doors of Noma every day that I can't reject an offer like this. And also, it was exactly what I was looking for. So that was my Noma journey. It was a great restaurant to work at. It went very well for me. I enjoyed the year I was there. But at some point also I felt the hours I worked, the amount of days you worked is a little crazy over there, because you sort of have, as an employed chef, you have keys to the restaurant. So even if the restaurant shuts 2 days, but if you are serving something on a Tuesday service which has to marinate for, say, 24 hours, it is assumed you will take your keys, enter the restaurant, and prep it. So nobody will tell you to work all the hours, but you will. In summer season, when there's elderflower all around Copenhagen, and Noma with Noma Projects now sells elderflower kombucha, the vinegar. On the menu, we had elderflower syrup. We had so many things with elderflower. That means every day after the shift, after the clean down at 11:30, all of us stayed until like 2 a.m. During summer to pick these elderflowers, like to remove them from their twigs and freeze them or store them or make some things out of that. So there was a lot of hours worked. I honestly got burnt out in that period. I also had some personal issues going on with life. I don't think it was just work. I think it was majorly personal issues, and most of it being the anxiety from the paperwork in Denmark. Denmark was slowly turning into a very right-winged, not immigrant friendly. I mean, which country is immigrant friendly? But Denmark was at the worst end of that scale, and Ukraine war happened at that point as well, which led to cancellation of all sort of priorities for any type of visa. The Ukrainians were the only ones who got priority to get their visas answered, and I was in a limbo where I could work legally in Denmark, but my application of residence was still being studied. So Denmark lets you work while they study your application. And I also had an episode in London where I was flying through London to Austria and back to Copenhagen, and I got stuck for questioning in London, and I was made to stay in London for 3 days by the immigration because they couldn't figure out why am I working in Denmark when I do not have a Danish residence. I have a Spanish residence. So anyways, long story short, I don't think this is the place. But also, if somebody wants to know more about this, write to me on Instagram, leave a comment under the episode. We're also on YouTube, so you can write to me there. And I would love to dive deeper into if that should be an episode, of how immigration issues have been on my way and still on my way right now. Actually, at the moment as I speak to you, I've just come back from a foreign office appointment this afternoon. So yeah, if you want to speak about that, feel free. There's someone here you can speak to. But yeah, so Noma at that point in August of 2022, I decide August, September, around that period, I was like, this is not going to be a long-term plan. Also, I got a letter from the Danish immigration saying that I would be deported if I don't leave or in the next 1 month. And I could have avoided that, and I could have made things up which would let me be in Denmark. And also, Noma was planning to go to Japan and stuff, which would have made things easier. But I realized it was like a wake-up call what happened in London, that this is not going to be a place I can live. And Spain is a much secure option because I had residence over there since a long time. And that's when I somehow spoke to Noma, and Renee, Kenneth, Thomas, the whole team was super supportive. They supported me all through the way. They said they also realized that going back to Spain for me is the most smartest decision, even though it means me not working for Noma. And they helped me financially. They helped me by giving me all the space I needed to take that decision. And so I had to quit the job at Noma. I was in sort of a limbo. I didn't want to work for restaurants anymore. And that's where my journey of a fugitive chef, which we are now around 20 minutes into the podcast, and I'm now getting to the point where, I decide to be a fugitive chef. But it was not a very active decision, I would say. The decision, yes, was to not work at restaurants, because I was like, okay, I have seen Noma. It's not like, I mean, I don't want to be pretentious and say that there was nothing more for me to work at, or there was no more places where I could learn. But I was like, I have done Mugaritz, I have done Noma, I've seen a fair share of fine dining restaurants. And again, those are just one type of restaurants. Of course, there is a lot more of restaurant options or caterings or private chef, a lot of things I could have looked at if I wanted to continue being in the kitchen. But I also realized that there must be more out there of what I can learn. And I was, kind of frustrated to just be in Copenhagen, because also anybody you talk to in Copenhagen is just talking about food in our bubble of chefs, So I went to southern Germany actually to do woofing, which is a work away woofing, whatever you call it. Like, doing organic farming as a volunteer, staying on a farm in southern Germany, which was like an apple farm. But they also had a permaculture vegetable field, and I was working on that, learning permaculture, regenerative farming, also principles like composting, bio toilets, learning all the insect life, which also works in these microclimates in these farms. So I was learning a lot over there, and I was still like kind of thinking, what should I do? What could be next? And my first thing in my head was I might have to study. So I was pretty sure that if I want to change my career, this is very important for those listening, that my first thoughts were I have to study something. I have to study maybe a master's. I have to possibly study, if I'm interested in philosophy, for example, I have to study that from scratch, or anthropology. As the food anthropology was very interesting for me, I thought maybe I could study that. And that was my initial thoughts. And I had a chat with one of my ex-colleagues. So if she's listening out there, Fran, I hope she's doing well in Catalonia. Has a great restaurant right now. She used to be the R&D in Mugaritz, and I spoke to her like what else could be out there, because I thought like an R&D job is something which could be far from the kitchen of things that are not aligned with me anymore, but still within food, something that I would like to work with. And she said, yeah, you could look at places like Basque Culinary Center, look at restaurants. And the Basque Culinary Center thing was interesting because I myself, as I said, I have a degree in hospitality management. I do not have a master's in gastronomy, or I don't know, bachelor's in gastronomy and things like that. So when I saw this one job posting for an R&D chef in gastronomy in Basque Culinary Center, my first thoughts were it's a job for somebody who makes like course curriculum, because it's a culinary school. That's all I knew about it. I thought they make course curriculums or workshops for people to learn gastronomy. And I just applied for it. I had a few round of interviews while I was at the farm. So I remember driving to Munich to sit at an internet cafe and be able to be on an online video conference with John, who's currently leading my team, and the HR rep at Basque Culinary Center. And they explained me the job of that. The Basque Culinary Center has this technological center, which is BCC Innovation, today called Go Tech Center, with the new building they're constructing in the center of the city. And this place basically consults food companies, creates new products, works with the UN, FAO, organizations like those, creates strategies for governments, for tourism ministries on how gastronomy can be a motor for tourism, and also does a lot of projects with health systems. So like with diabetic patients, with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all these diseases which do not really have a cure to them, but it's lifestyle changes which are subsequently the way to have a better life while you have these health issues. So that sounded very interesting to me. I felt like that is completely in the plan of the things I was looking for. And I went ahead with the process. They were very quick about the decision and spoke about hiring me. I moved to San Sebastian in Spain, back where I lived before. And this is where I've been for the past I would say past 3 years. Actually 3 years now. It's last when I joined here was 22nd of September. So it's been 3 years now. And then when I started working this job, I started meeting through this job a lot of people who were like me, ex-chefs, but having different careers after that. One of them is John, of course, who's leading my team. And his story is also on one of the episodes of the podcast. And so I met a lot of people who were into education, science, activism, consulting, storytelling, and using all these skills that we learn in restaurants. I feel in restaurants, we learn a lot about how to think on your feet, how to think quick when somebody is pregnant who walks in, or somebody has a shellfish allergy and you have to suddenly change something on the menu. I feel like these things, however little respect we give it to it, or a little importance we give to it, and we don't really have a paper degree that backs this sort of a knowledge, I feel chefs do have a lot of skills which could be useful. And in that phase of seeing all this in front of my eyes, of opening my eyes to people like Juan Vargas, who has an oil company coming out of kitchens, or Jade Gross, who used to be a chef, then a human rights activist, a human rights lawyer in New York for the UN, and later starting a wine company, or meeting people like Dani Lassa. Dani Lassa was the R&D at Mugaritz, and he was the first person on the podcast back. If you keep scrolling down on Spotify, you'll see his episode. So when I saw people like these, I felt like I know enough people to possibly tie the story together and inspire those who are maybe stuck like I was after Noma, because I felt there are a lot of us who are in restaurants, and this is important. There's a lot of us in restaurants who are there because we like the job, we like what we're doing, and that those are people who should stay in restaurant jobs. But then there are many who feel like this is all they can do, or feel like this is a way to kind of, because everybody else has it hard, or if you've read Anthony Bourdain having it hard, or if you've seen series of, I don't know, Carmi, who's a stupid chef in The Bear, having it hard, you also need to have it hard. I don't think that's what I would suggest is the right way to go. I feel that you should only be in a place where you feel like you fit in. And if you feel like you don't fit in, or if you feel like you're capable of more, and not fitting in doesn't really mean you are lesser. Maybe you're more than the place, and that's why you're not fitting in, because a small box fits in a big box, but the bigger box doesn't fit in a small box. So don't try to limit yourself. Don't try to make yourself smaller. Don't try to limit your passions, your dreams, your wants, your requirements, I don't know. I mean, channel your agony and channel your capabilities into something in a format which most respects you as a person. And I feel that's what I found with my job. With my job, I mean, it again has problems like every job does. But for the majority part of it, I feel this is the best point of my career where I do have a team that I look up to. I do have a sort of principles that I work with within my company, which I respect. I feel I do make a lot of impact in the work I do, be it from consulting Toyota to make better products in Japan, be it working with the Jamaican Cacao Board to help sell their cacao products in Europe, be it creating school menus for Egyptian children in schools, or be it creating a new product for people with problems digesting, people with problems swallowing, be it making like video recipes and meal plans for diabetic patients who are in type 2 diabetes. So all these works that I do right now, I feel in my world, in my little opinion, I feel they have much more impact than serving 80, 90 diners a night. When you know that they have booked this 3 years ago, they have shitload of money to spend on your menu. They do not even care who is doing it. They just care about the one person who is the face of the restaurant and who is mostly the most creative person. And you as within that framework of a restaurant is somebody who's just mimicking. You just have to mimic, as Joseph Youssef on the podcast says. It's mostly monkey see, monkey do. It's not being in restaurants is not being creative. I feel being creative is taking your careers, and like all the guests I've had on the podcast, I feel those are the most creative people I would suggest you to listen to, because these people have taken their careers, taken their skills, and made that into something super interesting. Like look at Eddie Shepherd. Eddie Shepherd is today one of the most celebrated vegan plant-based menu restaurants in England, and he doesn't even have a restaurant. He works from the basement of his house. Or look at Nick. I mean, somebody who just picked up foraging because it came natural to him and is now selling that as a skill to a restaurant as a service, teaching people how to respect their atmosphere, winning prizes for it. I've had so many amazing people on this podcast, and I'm one of them. I mean, Dan himself, I feel Dan came from Noma. His story is super interesting, and now he does putting chefs into schools, and I feel that is much more impactful than whatever you can do in restaurants. I mean, yes, there are restaurants which are required to kind of drive innovation and things like that, but I feel you need to, I don't know, I think it's also very personal. I mean, I don't want to bash restaurants, but for me, I feel I do not come from a very financially privileged I didn't go to restaurants dining growing up, which is why I cannot relate with people walking into Noma every day and booking it 4 years in advance. So I enjoyed serving the people, meeting some great people at Noma as well. But I feel I don't connect with the people I was serving. And I feel today what I do, I'm more connected to the people I serve, to the people who my impact reaches somehow, maybe not directly, but I'm proud of the work I do. And I feel this is the platform of the podcast that I created to also kind of show all of you listening out there there's much more out there. And it's a space to reflect. It's not about chasing stars or accolades. It's about reclaiming the meaning of joy and connection through food. And so here we are. I'll not make this longer than it is, but I thought this episode was important, that those who listen to me and those who follow understand which standpoint I come from. How did I build this career? It's not on the base of fancy degrees or a lot of investments and contacts or knowing the right people. It's more because I knocked every door, and especially those which I was interested in entering. And if they didn't listen to me once, I kept knocking twice and thrice and the fourth time. And they ultimately will open, and their questions will be answered. There's a lot of people out there who are very resourceful. And I'm more than happy to anybody who's listening out there if they need any help. Maybe you're burnt out. Maybe you're questioning whether this life is sustainable. I just want you to know you're not alone. So this community, this podcast is here for you. And I would love to hear your story. Message me on Instagram. We are at the rate Fugitive Chefs podcast. Send me a voice note, send me a GIF, send me a sticker. The way you want to communicate would be perfect. If this episode specifically resonates with you, please share it with someone who might need it. And if you want to support the podcast, I would say the best way is to subscribe, rate it, and pass it on. So a lot of people, I know you follow the podcast on Spotify because I can see the numbers, but I don't have a lot of people rating it. So if you're listening to this podcast, especially this episode, if you liked it, I would say please go to Spotify and you have these ratings, the 5 stars, give me a 5-star, write comments on the episodes, because I feel it also gets very alone as a creator to create content and just have like a one-way communication. I want this to be a community. I'm looking for more plans to how to connect all of you together on a platform where we can have more interaction, possibly give you more resources to your questions. And yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of this journey. And also thank you for kind of celebrating this birthday with me, right? So here's to another year of life and another year of telling stories that matter. I'm Furkan, and this was Fugitive Chefs Podcast.